My dear friends, there are times when the news we receive seems too good to be true. But there are also times we live for so many years without our prayer or prayers being answered. So much so that, after some time, hope begins to dry. Yet we see in the gospel of today the priest Zechariah being visited by an angel. An angel at that. Not a door-to-door salesperson selling vacuum cleaners, but an angel. An angel promising joy and gladness at the birth of a long-awaited child. Now imagine if the Archangel Gabriel appeared to you. Just imagine. I don't know if it will happen, pero just imagine, mag-appear siya sa inyo. What would that have been like? Let us remember that this particular archangel stands before the incomprehensible beauty and splendor of the Most Holy Trinity and brings forth messages of the greatest importance. So the Archangel Gabriel is God's most notable messenger. Now take a moment to ponder what such a glorious apparition would have been if this has happened to you. In this gospel passage, we see this glorious archangel appears to Zechariah as he is fulfilling his priestly duty to burn incense before the Lord within the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies was part of the temple, which represents actually our tabernacle, containing the presence of the Lord. Now, as Zechariah enters the sanctuary, while all the people remain outside, we are told praying, he suddenly has a vision of the Archangel Gabriel, telling him that his wife Elizabeth will have a child, even though she is advanced in years. But even though Zechariah hears this message from Gabriel, the archangel who stands before God, he doubts. Did not believe right away. He doubted. He doubts what he is being told. Probably he had a lot of questions inside his mind and inside his heart. Paano ito mangyari? We're too old. Now, of course, Zechariah was a righteous man. Both of them, Zechariah and Elizabeth, they were righteous people. But faith requires more than righteousness. Hindi enough yung being righteous to have true faith. It calls for an openness to God's power. Faith calls for an openness, availability to God's power. It calls for a willingness to accept the impossible. For Mary, it was different. Nothing will be impossible with God for Mary. That's how she was disposed. Nothing will be impossible with God. But for Zechariah, even the appearance of an angel was not convincing enough. Even the appearance of an angel was not convincing enough. So he doubted. Now, Zechariah was an old man. perhaps too settled in his ways. As a priest, he was a priest whose religious task was ritual. But besides righteousness and ritual, faith demands a youthful heart. Faith demands a youthful heart. The daring heart to accept surprises and to take on a new adventure. Take on a new adventure. A divine adventure, as we have mentioned last night, for Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph was known for that and was blessed for that. He had a faith that was ready to go for a divine adventure. Now, let us take a look at ourselves. Would we have believed the Archangel Gabriel if we were Zachariah? Would we have believed him? Or would we have doubted? Though there may not be a way to know the answer to that question, it is helpful to ponder the humble truth. And what is that humble truth? That we may very well have doubted. That we may very well have doubted ourselves. Now, it takes true humility to admit that possibility, of course. Like Zachariah, we are all weak and sinful. We lack the perfect faith that our Blessed Mother had. For Mary, as I said, nothing is impossible with God. But we are not like Mary or like Zechariah. And if we can truly, humbly admit this, then we are in a great position to overcome the weakness of faith that we may still be struggling with. Zechariah suffered much for his lack of faith. Right after he doubted the angel's words to her, he became mute. He could not speak. And he was able to speak only when he named his child John in obedience to the archangel. When he was asked a tablet to write what name he would name John, he would name his son, he wrote John. That was the order of the angel to him. So the moment he obeyed that, his mouth opened, was able to speak. My dear friends, let us reflect today upon how well, first of all, we listen to all what God says to us. Do we really listen when God speaks to us? Do we believe? And do we obey? Or do we question and doubt God's voice? Of course, God will not speak to us man to man. Now, alam natin yan. But He will use many instruments to speak to us. Are we listening? Are we believing? Are we obeying? Let us pray during this Mass. Lord, give us the faith that believes all things are possible with God, as well as a youthful heart that dares to accept surprises and dares to embark on a new divine adventure.